No, it's always rushing around. I think definitely we should have short meetings. I can go over some of my videos. Definitely, I'm going to plan. You're busy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Channel 1 as well. Check, check, check. Yep. Channel 1 should be muted. Channel 2 should be unmuted. Check, 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 check. How are we doing? Check, check, check. Awesome. All right, I'm going to turn this microphone up a bit. Hey, check, check, check. 1, 2. Much better. Check, check. Much better.
Hello. Uh, I'm sorry, I have to get one moment of your attention. If you don't give me, I will start singing. So you, okay, thank you. I'm sorry for coming late, but as you know, there was an election in Brazil recently, and people keep calling, and we're doing some interviews. But it is a very special pleasure for me and an honor to be here just to introduce the chairman of our Brazil Institute Advisory Board, who in turn will introduce our speaker to this luncheon, and we will recognize the friends of the Brazil Institute that are here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paolo. Always good to be at the Wilson Center. And Tom, I'll try not to take up all your time, but enough for you to get a little bit of your lunch consumed first. Congratulations first to all of you who are here participating in this important conference regarding the collaboration between FAPESP and the U.S. On research concerning the Amazon, its implications for the environment and biodiversity and beyond. It's a particular joy always to be with Minister Celso Laffer, who served with such distinction and grace as foreign minister when I had the privilege of serving as U.S. ambassador in Brazil. And I'm getting to know as we travel around from North Carolina to Washington, his colleague, Dr. Carlos Brito Cruz of FAPESP, which as an organization carries out such a unique and far-reaching program of scientific research and advancement. I know of nothing like it anywhere. Maybe the Germans have something like that, Celso, you would know. Also, I want to recognize and welcome our friend Ernesto Araujo, an outstanding representative of Brazil as Deputy Chief of Mission at the embassy here today, representing Ambassador Vieira, who's back in Brazil at the moment. I also recognize senior colleagues here from the Wilson Center, Andrew Selly, the Executive Vice President of the organization, the man who keeps running, Caroline Scullen, who is Vice President for External Relations, and Gary Officer, who is Vice President for Development at the Center. It's a personal pleasure to introduce Dr. Thomas Lovejoy. Most of you know him probably and certainly know of his work. I also came to know Tom when I was ambassador in Brazil, and to appreciate his extraordinary scientific and environmental contributions, and particularly, of course, his early, deep, and impactful focus on the Amazon. We have since joined forces with Director Paulo Sotero in support of this unique and growing role played by the Brazil Institute here at the Wilson Center. It's really unique in focusing the Institute on Brazil, just as the Woodrow Wilson Center focuses on other particular countries and globally. Tom is currently a senior fellow at the UN Foundation and university professor in environmental science and policy at George Mason University. He has played many leadership roles, probably too numerous to mention, after receiving his PhD in biology from Yale, but leadership roles at the World Wildlife Fund, the Smithsonian, the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank. He was the first biodiversity chair at the Heinz Center for Science, Economics, and the Environment, and chairs the Scientific Technical Advisory Panel on the multi-million-dollar funding for developing countries in support of their carrying out their obligations under international environmental conventions. As I believe someone earlier noted, Tom introduced the term biological diversity to the scientific community and, importantly, ultimately to the wider public awareness and concern. I was just recalling with our colleagues from Brazil, my most memorable scientific experience in zoology lab during college when the supposedly recently deceased frog I was beginning to dissect suddenly jumped from in front of me onto the lap of a nurse sitting next to me. And I decided to follow my intention to be a lawyer rather than a scientist, but I'm grateful for those who chose the other course. Minister Loffer observed this morning that the advancement of sustainability and biodiversity requires a combination of science and diplomacy. And it's hard to think of anyone who so uniquely combines an awareness and capacity and practice of both. Debt for nature swaps being just one notable example. So, Tom, if I've allowed you to consume enough of your lunch, please join us, and please join me in welcoming Dr. Tom Lovejoy.
So thank you very much, Ambassador Harrington, and especially for clarifying that I'm not the father of biodiversity, I'm the father of the term, right? Being the father of biodiversity actually makes you think about sexual diversity, but I didn't get to go there. So, particular delight to be here with Celso Laffer and Ernesto Araujo, and be here at the Woodrow Wilson Center with its Brazil program in Paulo Sotero, and as we would say in Brazil, distinguidos presentes, right? So first, you know, FAPESP-U. I mean, what an extraordinary organization. I think this was certainly not the first time I'd heard a description of everything it does and how it works. But it is a truly crowning achievement, ongoing achievement of the state of Sao Paulo. And to see it manifested in this particular symposium today involving highly sophisticated, groundbreaking research about the Amazon is just thrilling to me. So thank you so much for what you do and for all your ongoing work to advance the frontiers of science and engage in international collaboration. Now, listening to this morning, it made me realize that when I first set foot in the Amazon of Brazil in 1965, our understanding of these systems was so crude that El Nino was thought to be some sort of Eastern Pacific periodic phenomenon, right? So the reach from then to the present is truly mind-boggling. 10 years after I've set foot in the Amazon, a scientist from Sao Paulo State Anais Salati did this really groundbreaking work looking at oxygen isotope ratios in rainwater from the Pacific to the Peruvian border, proved that there was a hydrological cycle, that the Amazon, according to the estimate at the time, made something about half of its own rainfall. And it shattered a bit of dogma which basically said that the vegetation you find in a particular place is just the consequence of the climate, and it has no influence on the climate. Well, we've gone a lot further, as we saw this morning, from that groundbreaking research, but I did want to point out that it also emanated from Sao Paulo. So, you know, as I think about all of this, you know, I'm always preoccupied with the Amazon and the environment and how we might achieve better outcomes than sometimes the trends would seem to indicate. And of course, it's always been this incredible repository of biological diversity, probably the single largest one on the entire planet. And that's valuable in all kinds of ways, but I think we should really be thinking of it as well as a fundamental library for the life sciences, because each one of those plant and animal and microbial species in fact represents a set of solutions to a particular set of environmental problems that at any moment one of them may have its book read and found out to have something of extraordinary value. So probably the most recent example I know, not from the Amazon, is from a soil fungus from Nova Scotia, which has a compound in it with the initials MMA, which in fact has the capacity to block the means by which the so-called superbugs, these highly resistant microbes, used to block the effects of antibiotics. So suddenly there is a whole new way of thinking about addressing this really serious medical problem. And so the Amazon represents the largest portion of that library in the entire world. And it represents a lot of other things as well, and we heard a lot this morning about its importance in regional climate, its importance in continental climate, indeed its importance and links to global climate. And so in the end, what somebody like myself spends a lot of time thinking about is how we can advance the notion of actually managing the Amazon as a system, because that's what it really is. And we saw bits of that system spotlighted by the research presentations this morning. And that's a big challenge, to manage it as a system, because it's in 8 different countries. There is happily a treaty on Amazon cooperation, which could potentially further such a goal. And in the end, it's going to require integrated planning and integrated management, or at least some approximation thereof. And, you know, I take great heart in Brazil's environment minister, Isabella Teixeira, who actually understands the importance of this, came to it completely on her own, not just listening to some scientist somewhere suggesting that this is something that needs to be done. So looking ahead, I think one of the big sort of sustainable development challenges of all time will be advancing in that direction of integrated planning and integrated management. So one can't actually think about anything like that, whether it's the Amazon or it's indeed the Chesapeake Bay drainage, which for our Brazilian colleagues is an enormous watershed that goes all the way up to northern New York State to Delaware County. One can't think about any of those kinds of challenges without taking climate change into account. And the way I liken climate change recently is, and this will make more sense for those who endure the hurricane season in North America, but you know, when a hurricane is starting at some sort of tropical depression, right, somewhere out there in the Atlantic, and and then you sort of forget about it, and then as it gathers strength and gets stronger and appears on the television more frequently, finally comes the morning when you look at the sky and it's a really funny color and you know something's about to happen. And I think in a global sense, we're sort of at that stage with climate change. And we can either really get it together fast and try and limit it to a level which is fairly manageable, or let it slip beyond our grasp to the point where it's going to be mostly a game of trying to catch up and never quite being able to catch up. So what does this have to do with the subject of this morning? It's that a significant portion of the excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere actually comes from centuries of ecosystem destruction and degradation. And if we were to engage globally in ecosystem restoration at scale, there's probably about half a degree of impending climate change which you could actually pull out of the system before it happens. And that's something that would need to be done all over the world. That would involve reforestation. And, you know, again, the Brazilian Ministry of the Environment is actively engaged in trying to figure out how to do some reforestation at scale in the arc of destruction. Not all natural reforestation. Some of it would be production forests, quite sensible mosaic. But that's a way to build back a margin of safety of managing that entire system, and simultaneously making a significant contribution to minimizing the kind of climate change that society is going to have to cope with wherever we are in the world. So this is not just about tropical forests and tropical reforestation. It's about all kinds of forests and reforestation. It's also about restoring degraded grasslands and grazing lands. And what do you get when you do that? You get better grazing. It's also about managing our agro-ecosystems so they accumulate carbon instead of leaking carbon. And what do you get when you do that? You get greater soil fertility. And it's also about restoring coastal wetlands a whole new area called blue carbon that's been looked at only really for about 5 years. And what do you get in addition to that? You probably get better nurseries for fisheries, probably get better protection against storm surge. So I call this my terminal quixotic dream. It's really about applying at the planetary scale the lesson the Amazon gives to us, which is that the planet does not work just as a physical system. It works as a linked biological and physical system. And the minute that notion begins to spread, I think we'll actually see a much more respectful interaction between humanity and nature. And it also has this wonderful additional aspect, which is that everybody can make a contribution to it. Everybody can plant a tree. So instead of this climate change being this monstrous problem that people feel they can't do anything about, actually we all can. So those are some of the lessons I draw from thinking about the Amazon for a long time and listening to the wonderful program this morning. And I know we will be given an even more wonderful afternoon, so thank you very much.